This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
This evening with the historic visit of U.S. President George W. Bush to Israel. The American leader spoke of a new opportunity for peace as he arrived on his first visit to Israel as president. IBA's diplomatic correspondent, Leah Zinder, has been following events all day, and she joins me now in the studio. Leah?
It's all been going smoothly so far, Yochanan. In fact, even the weather cooperated. The skies cleared, and as Air Force One touched down at Ben Gurion Airport just before noon, President Bush was given a particularly warm and lavish state welcome at the airport. President Shimon Peres and Prime Minister Ehud Olmert greeted the U.S. president, and the genuine ease and friendship between Bush and Olmert were evident. Bush then shook hands personally with the cabinet ministers and other senior public officials in the reception line, exchanging greetings and quips with each one of them. Looking particularly pleased was opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu, who received a phone call just this morning from U.S. Ambassador Richard Jones saying that the president did, after all, wish to meet with him. That meeting set for tomorrow morning in Jerusalem before the president travels to Ramallah for his meetings with PA leaders there. After the president reviewed the IDF honor guard, the three leaders spoke briefly, with President Shimon Peres grabbing the headlines with his very clear comments on Iran that included a veiled threat.
We take your advice not to underestimate the Iranian threat. Iran should not underestimate our resolve for self-defense.
We see a new opportunity for peace here in the Holy Land and for freedom across the region. I look forward to my meetings with President Peres and Prime Minister Olmert. We will discuss our deep desire for security, for freedom, and for peace.
You are our strongest and most trusted ally in the battle against terrorism and fundamentalism, and a staunch supporter of our quest for peace and stability. Through your vision, exceptional courage, and determination in the face of evil and terror, your solidarity with the people of Israel has won you the love and admiration of all the citizens of Israel.
And after the brief addresses by the three leaders, President Bush boarded Marine One and flew to Jerusalem. The Tel Aviv-Jerusalem highway was closed for an hour to allow the presidential entourage to drive to the capital. Returning to the brief addresses at the airport, Leah, that was a most interesting and unusually blunt statement from President Peres on Iran. I understand Iran's going to be occupying a prominent place in the discussions between Bush and Prime Minister Olmert.
Yes, indeed, Yochanan. And first, let me say that President Bush and Prime Minister Olmert began their first round of talks just over an hour ago at the Prime Minister's residence. At 6 o'clock, the two leaders will emerge and hold a joint press conference. And yes, indeed, Yochanan, the Iranian nuclear threat is high on the agenda. And according to sources in the Prime Minister's office, Iran will be discussed privately one-on-one by the two leaders. Sources both in the Prime Minister's office and the defense establishment are saying Israel intends to challenge the U.S. intelligence assessment, which concluded that Iran has suspended its nuclear arms program. It's not clear whether Israel will present new intelligence that will contradict the U.S. report. And in addition to Iran, Bush and Olmert have, of course, been discussing the Palestinian issue, this in an expanded forum with Foreign Minister Livni, Defense Minister Barak, and Secretary of State Rice with her senior officials. Bush is expected to raise the issue of Israeli construction in the settlements, as well as the unauthorized settlements, which Israel has repeatedly promised to dismantle and hasn't yet done so. Very important from Israel's point of view is that President Bush, in his airport address, referred to, quote, Israel's security as a Jewish state, seen as very important U.S. support for Israel's position on that issue, which, as we know, is denied by the Palestinian Authority.
Nearly an hour ago, Air Force One carrying the United States President George Bush landed at Ben Gurion Airport. Bush, Israel's closest friend and ally, received a warm welcome in Israel. The objective of Bush's visit is to find a solution to the conflict in the Middle East. Since taking office nearly 7 years ago, Bush has been criticized for not doing enough to resolve the Middle East conflict. Now, Bush is trying to find a solution to the problem before leaving office in January 2009. In addition to the Palestinian-Israeli file, Bush is expected to discuss the Iranian issue. Bush, who will also visit Kuwait, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Egypt, is seeking to isolate Iran and paint it as a major threat in the region. During the past few days, a lot of preparations have been made in Israel and the Palestinian territories to accommodate the master of the White House. Thousands of Palestinian and Israeli security officers were deployed in and around the areas where Bush is expected to stay and hold meetings. Bush's visit also comes amidst condemnation and protests in Gaza and Israeli settlements. This news comes as Israeli bulldozers continue to carry out construction, which comes in violation with the Annapolis Conference. Fahima Mazni reports.
Amidst heightened security measures, King David Hotel, where Bush is expected to stay during his visit, was decorated and transformed into a small White House. In addition, security posts were staged in and around the hotel's periphery. All security preparations were made by the Americans in conjunction with the Israelis.
This morning, the Israeli police have completed.
This morning, the Israeli police completed final preparations ahead of Bush's visit. Hundreds of security and police officers were deployed in various areas in Tel Aviv.
ثلث إجمالي قوة الشرطة الإسرائيلية سيشارك في توفير الحماية الأمنية في شوارع.
1/3 of Israel's total police force was deployed in the streets of West Jerusalem to help maintain security there. The visit, which was described as crucial in the history of the conflict in the region, also required the deployment of more than 4,000 Palestinian security officers in the West Bank. The officers will monitor Bush's travels in Ramallah, where he is scheduled to meet later with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Amidst this, Israeli bulldozers were deployed near the Haneim mountain, where Israel continues to build settlements regardless of what politicians are saying.
This is the land of the Jewish people. And
this is the land of the Jewish people. No one in the world can tell us to freeze construction in Har Huma because it reflects negatively on both Israel and the U.S. as well as on the peace in the entire region.
Meanwhile, Israel sealed off completely the Palestinian territories. This news comes despite the fact that Bush's visit was supposed to promote peace in the region. It seems that the Palestinians are paying the price for Bush's visit, which was described as historical.
While the West Bank is living amidst closure and heightened security measures, Gaza is witnessing massive demonstrations and rallies in protest against the United States President's visit. The demonstrations were organized by Fatah and Hamas despite their differences. The protesters said that Bush's visit only serves Israel's interests and further complicates the Palestinian plight. This anti-Bush position was adopted by Hamas a few days ago and was reiterated in today's protests.
Bush is not welcome in Palestine. Bush came to the region just to provide moral, financial, and political support to the Israeli occupation. Bush also came to widen the internal gap between the Palestinian people. Bush is not welcome here because he is one of the main reasons for the Palestinian suffering. Our Palestinian people are being killed day and night by American weapons.
Gaza, which rejected Bush's visit, continues to be the target of Israeli aggression. The occupation forces carried out a new raid against several Palestinian activists near Beit Lahia in the northern Gaza Strip, murdering an activist and injuring 4 others.
Well, of course, we will be going later on to check things out in Gaza, but of course, first we go to David Chater, where he's in Ramallah. where the main issue that will come up between President Bush and Ehud Olmert in those talks is settlements, an issue that, of course, has plagued the situation in the West Bank, where you are, David.
If Israel was following the roadmap to peace, outposts like Migron shouldn't exist. Deep inside the occupied West Bank, it is not on President Bush's itinerary. The Israeli government refuses to reveal exactly how many of them there are. They say it would harm state security. But the monitoring group Peace Now claim there are more than 100 of them, housing around 3,000 settlers.
So we're standing here today, we see before us Migron, which is one of the largest settlements built entirely on private land owned by Palestinians. And this is happening under daylight, and if the government wanted to, it could have stopped this from happening. What we demand is that the talk be turned into actions on the ground.
President Bush has called the issue an impediment to the peace process. That's something of an understatement. There can be nothing of more paramount importance to the Palestinians. Yusuf is the owner of the land on which Migron is built. They took my land by force, he told me. Jewish settlers armed with weapons.
Peace? Who can remove these settlers? Only God can do that. Only by force will these settlers be removed.
The Israeli right wing is gearing up for protests during the Bush visit. They refuse to accept any of the concessions that might be necessary for peace with the Palestinians, and are suspicious of the American president's motives.
I think that President Bush is making a desperate effort to be remembered as a peacemaker in the Middle East and not as a war maker in Iraq.
The people of Gaza, under siege and excluded from the peace process, are also mounting demonstrations. But doubts too are being voiced, even on the West Bank.
President Bush wants to make a difference. He has to declare clearly that he intends to exercise pressure immediately on Israel to stop all settlement activities, not only in the outposts, but in all settlements.
This week, work has begun on clearing ground for what will be a new Jewish neighborhood in East Jerusalem. Another fact on the ground, another roadblock for peace. David Chater, Al Jazeera, Jerusalem.
The warplanes of the Israeli occupation carried out a series of air raids targeting the homes of Palestinian activists in various parts of the Gaza Strip. In addition to targeting the homes of activists, the Zionist occupation has deliberately targeted Palestinian children in a series of raids and incursions on the Gaza Strip. This news comes after 3 children, along with their mother, were killed in an Israeli air raid that targeted the home of the Fayyad family in the town of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. Moreover, several school children were wounded in the central Gaza after Israeli tanks fired heavily towards the local schools in the area.
The Israeli occupation carried out a new military escalation in the Gaza Strip, where the target this time was the children and the civilians. The warplanes of the Zionist occupation conducted air raids targeting the homes of Palestinian activists from the Jerusalem Brigades, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad, causing substantial property damage, but no reports of casualty. In addition, enemy warplanes shelled the homes of Palestinian activists Karim and Mahdi Dahdouh, killing them and destroying their homes south of Gaza. Elsewhere in the Gaza Strip, Israeli warplanes targeted the home of Jarboun family east of Rafah and the home of Abu Abdullah family in the central province. In addition, the Israeli occupation forces targeted the home of Sami Fayyad in the city of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The latest Israeli escalation in the Gaza Strip targeted the city of Khan Yunis and surrounding towns. The occupation army used heavy artillery to fire at local schools and residential areas, killing several children and wounding others. Most of the children were under the age of 10. According to medical sources, 8 Palestinians, including 5 members of the same family, were martyred in the area of Bani Suhaila, east of Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The names of the martyrs are Muhammad Khadr Fayyad, Karim Fayyad, and her 2 sons, Ahmad and Sami Hamdan Fayyad, and her 20-year-old daughter, Asma Fayyad. In addition, 4 other members of the Fayyad family were wounded, including a young girl who was declared clinically dead. This new Israeli escalation in the Gaza Strip has caused fear and panic among the residents, including the women and the children. A new dark page has been added to the book of massacres orchestrated by this vicious occupation. Amidst all this, some continue to play the role of a bystander, and others continue to go into deep sleep.
We are now joined from Berlin via phone with Dr. Saeed Dudin, a writer and a political analyst. Are we about to enter a new stage in which the Zionists have started to change the nature of their attacks?
نعم يا سيدي بعد الانتصار التاريخي الذي قام به أبطال المقاومة في لبنان المجتمع الصهيوني والكيان الصهيوني هو
Yes, sir. After the historical victory achieved by the heroic resistance in Lebanon, the Zionist entity and community started to face a real crisis. The Zionist entity, which is being funded by NATO, can no longer answer the question of whether it can serve the purpose it was created for. Several NATO countries have pledged billions of dollars, not because they are generous, but because they want to get back hundreds of billions of dollars in oil tax revenues. As you recall, the tri-aggression of 1956 on Egypt was carried out by the Zionist entity due to $138 million. We need to realize the hefty losses inflicted on NATO in the event that the Zionist entity fails to accomplish the mission it was created to serve. Today, the Zionist entity is trying viciously to stand its ground by showing that it is capable of carrying out its strategic mission.
يحاول أن يقوم بالمهمة الاستراتيجية. هناك عجز حقيقي في الإعلام العربي يتحدثون عن الصواريخ يا سيدي. من هو الصحفي؟ من هو الإعلامي الذي
Let's talk about the role of the Arab media. There appears to be incompetence in Arab media coverage regarding the rockets issue. Can we find an Arab journalist who is able to answer these questions? Where do Palestinian rockets fall? Do they fall inside or outside the areas that were occupied in accordance with the partition plan for Palestine? What is the difference between the land that was occupied between 1947 and 1949 and that was occupied 17 years later? There appears to be a definite flaw in the way the Arab media is dealing with the Zionist entity. The bottom line, the Zionist entity, with its structure and mission, is not able to make peace in the region. We must erase from the mind the so-called peace process. What we have on the ground is not peace, but a NATO-sponsored Zionist domination, which is being translated on the ground by the daily massacres committed in Palestine.
From Berlin, Saeed Dudin, a writer and political analyst. Thank you very much.
You said frankly that the delay in the Lebanese presidential elections have been caused by Syria. The Syrians are telling the world that it is not possible for the Lebanese to govern themselves without a Syrian mandate. Considering this situation, how can we be optimistic about the presidential elections? Are the Syrians going to give you the elections as a gift? What is going to happen? Is there hope?
ننتظر أن تتطور الأحداث بما
We are not waiting for a gift from them. We are waiting for the Arab countries to increase their pressure on Syria before the Arab League summit is held in Syria. This summit may not be held in Damascus if no Lebanese president is elected, because Lebanon would have no one to represent it in the summit. Lebanon is one of the 7 countries that founded the Arab League.
أسست الجامعة العربية أن يبقى لأنه في غرض في نفس بشار الأسد ونظامه.
Bashar al-Assad and his regime have grudges because they were forced to leave Lebanon in 2005. Another reason has to do with greed, because they used to treat Lebanon as a cash cow during the time when the Syrians had a mandate over Lebanon. I think that the Arab world will put moral and political pressure on Syria to deter it.
كافي على سوريا ربما لردعها بعض الشيء وإذا يقتنع معنا.
But the international, American and European pressure have not made the Syrians reverse their position.
ما عم نستدرج عروض.
We are not thinking about pressure to force Syria to do something. How can one pressure Syria to do something?
Isn't it better for you to hold a dialogue with the Syrians instead of waiting for external pressure?
صار له سنتين بيحاورنا بالسيارات المفخخة قلنا يا هيك يا بنقضي عليكم.
Assad has been negotiating with us through booby-trapped cars for the past 2 years. He's telling us, you do this or else he will eliminate you. The problem is not that we do not want to have a dialogue with the Syrians. We miss the true Syria. We as Lebanese have missed our friends, families throughout Syria. We missed Damascus, Aleppo, Latakia, and Tartus. We missed Syria. But we haven't missed the mandate of a dictatorship, fascist regime, and a mafia family. He's attacking Lebanon, and we will not accept this no matter what it may cost. We have lost a lot of martyrs, and we are willing to stay steadfast no matter what it will cost. We have warm and unique relations with our brothers in Syria, but we do not want Lebanon to be a proxy state for Syria under the cover of Hezbollah's interests, the concerns of the Amal movement, or the presidential ambitions of General Aoun.
أو هواجس حركة أمل أو طموحات العماد عون.
The Sudanese government celebrated today the 3rd anniversary of the peace agreement between the North and the South. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir stressed that his government is committed to the peace agreement and called on those who are carrying arms in Darfur to join the peace process.
The Sudanese government decided to celebrate the 3rd anniversary of the peace agreement with the South by highlighting its achievements. President Omar Bashir expressed hope that the peace will be achieved in Darfur and that unity will be maintained with southern Sudan. He promised the Sudanese people more peaceful achievements.
We would like to assure you that there will be no return to war. There will be no second war. We call on our brothers in Darfur who are carrying weapons to join us now. This is a big country and full of resources. It has room for us and everyone else.
The political opposition parties took advantage of the celebration to renew their demands that they be allowed to have a larger role in the political decision-making. In an interesting development, the opposition Ummah party disclosed that it has improved its relations with the ruling party. For the first time, the leader of the opposition Ummah party, Sadiq al-Mahdi, said that the dialogue between the government and the opposition is going in the right direction.
The opposition Ummah Party has formed 4 committees to hold a dialogue with the National Congress Party and Sudan People's Liberation Movement. I can say now that the national dialogue is going in the right direction. We hope that we can reach an agreement within weeks.
The celebration included dancing performances for different segments of the Sudanese people. The Sudanese hope that their country will experience political stability despite the ongoing political problems. However, political analysts believe that these problems will pose a challenge in the coming period.
The most important threats to peace are, first, Darfur, second, the tension in Arabiya. If the government, in coordination with the UN and the African Union, would reach political and security solutions to the problem, then this will help peace a great deal.
Promises were made to achieve stability and development during the fourth year of the peace agreement with southern Sudan, despite the ongoing challenges in Darfur. This comes amidst desires to establish new system of sharing power. Tahir al-Maradi, Jazeera, Khartoum.
Meanwhile, the head of Sudan People's Liberation Movement and the governor of the Blue Nile, Malik Agar, said that Sudan is at a crossroad and that it is facing threats of not being able to achieve unity. Agar said that these threats must necessitate considering the solution of confederation, which may make the unity possible.
Sudan is at a crossroad. My brothers, Sudan is at a crossroad, and one of the roads leads to unity. This depends on reaching an agreement. My brothers, if we have problems, we must start considering our alternatives starting from tonight. I would like to announce from this podium that we must consider alternatives. As the head of the People's Liberation Movement, I announce that there must be a new government system in Sudan. The confederation system may work. The government must present a system, and we also will present a system, and we will go from there.
The removal of concrete blocks in the Cairo residential neighborhood in Baghdad helped normalize the daily lives of citizens. More details with Rana Haddad.
The removal of cement blocks in the Cairo residential neighborhood in Baghdad helped return life to normal. The 30-year-old local official, Abu Salim, talked about life in his residential area. It is the first area where the cement barriers have been removed.
Yesterday or the day before, these concrete barriers were removed. As you can see, the people are happy and relieved, thank God. God willing, this is a good sign for 2008.
Our camera went through the Cairo neighborhood, starting from the market.
This street used to be called the Death Street, and the city was called the City of Ghosts. As you can see now, all the stores are open and the people are working, thank God.
These video images were taken at a gas station.
You are welcome, dear. This is a blessing from God. Oil is available. This is a blessing from God. The prices are good.
Oil is available in Cairo neighborhoods. People are using their food stamps. We are giving 100 liters for every family. We are selling oil according to the prices that were specified by the government, 15,000 dinars for 100 liters.
These video images were taken at a school.
The students are attending the school regularly. The parents are bringing their kids to schools. The attendance is very good. The situation has improved and the stores have been opened since the concrete barriers were removed. We feel more secure.
People in this region are experiencing security and stability after the concrete barriers that surrounded the city from all directions were removed. This is the first area in Baghdad where the concrete barriers have been removed. People here are praying that this year will be a year of goodness and peace. Rana Haddad, Alsumaria.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.